We live in a world of polished smiles, carefully rehearsed pleasantries, and meticulously presented personas. Appearances, more than ever, have become currency. What we wear, how we speak, the curated kindness we offer when eyes are upon us. But the soul, that hidden chamber of a person's truest inclinations, remains veiled, often until trials strike or truth demands to rise. In a time where many have mastered the art of being liked, fewer have mastered the art of being real. The essence of a person's character does not announce itself with fireworks or grand declarations. It whispers, waits, reveals itself subtly, often in the quiet crevices where masks fall and the performance ends. We're warned time and again not to judge, yet discernment isn't judgment, it is wisdom. It is the sacred ability to look beyond the surface and detect what lingers in the silence behind someone's words, or in the slight turn of their gaze when envy ignites. True character is not built on the stage of public performance, but on the backstage of unseen actions, whispered thoughts, and invisible decisions made when no one else is watching. So how then do we begin to perceive what is hidden beneath the layers? You will not always be told the truth about someone with words, but you will be shown it in moments. Moments where pressure cracks the surface, moments where nothing is to be gained, moments when loss becomes real, and they must choose between self and sacrifice. If you learn to watch closely, not with suspicion, but with sacred curiosity, you will begin to see the unspoken. Let us now journey into the signs, these sacred clues that unveil someone's true character, not to judge them, but to guard your own path wisely and walk with those who will not betray your soul. If you truly wish to glimpse someone's heart, observe them in the presence of those who can offer them nothing, the waitress who gets their order wrong, the cleaner who moves quietly in the background, the stranger they'll never meet again. There is no applause for kindness shown to the invisible. There is no reward for decency offered in obscurity. And yet it is here, precisely here, that character emerges most clearly, because what you do for someone who cannot repay you reveals whether your kindness is real or merely rented for recognition. When someone has nothing to gain, no promotion to chase, no status to preserve, no flattery to seek, and still chooses gentleness, humility, and respect, that is not accidental. It is cultivated. It is the overflow of an inner world that values dignity not as a transaction but as a truth. It is so easy to be pleasant when surrounded by people who admire us, or those who elevate our sense of importance. But what of those who offer no such reflection, the ones who do not notice, applaud, or benefit us? What then? The truth is, character is less about how we perform and more about how we instinctively respond. The soul speaks not only through rehearsed speeches but through spontaneous reactions. When someone's instinct in the face of the powerless is cruelty, condescension, or neglect, it is not merely a lapse, it is a window. It may be a crack in their armor, but it is also a glimpse into their hierarchy of worth. And if they deem others unworthy based on usefulness, do not presume they will not one day treat you the same. People often change tones when addressing someone above them versus someone beneath them. They soften for titles and harden for those without names. But the wise do not ignore this. They pay attention, because the same mouth that mocks the powerless may one day speak venom behind your back, and the hand that turns cold to the servant may one day close in betrayal when your own value fades in their eyes. What does it say of someone who shows affection only when the camera is on, but none when the scene goes dark? The truest test is always off stage. If they cannot extend grace in small unseen moments, beware of the larger stage upon which they pretend to love. 2. How they react when corrected. Few things expose the inner walls of a person's heart more clearly than correction. It is a mirror held up to the ego, a challenge not to the intellect, but to the pride that often rules quietly beneath the surface. Some wear humility like a robe for public applause, but shed it quickly when rebuked. If you wish to see someone's true self, observe not how they speak, but how they listen, especially when what they hear confronts them. Do they defend themselves instantly? Do their eyes flicker with the desperate need to be right? Do they cloak their wounded pride in intellectual arrogance? Or do they pause, reflect, perhaps even thank you for offering a truth they needed to hear? To be corrected is to be invited into growth. But not all wish to grow. Some prefer the illusion of perfection over the discomfort of honesty. The reaction to correction reveals whether they are married to truth or merely to the appearance of being wise. It shows whether their path is one of genuine self-awareness or hollow self-defense. Those who erupt at correction are not strong, they are fragile beneath the surface. Their rage is not power, but panic. Because to them, the correction is a threat, not to the action, but to the image they've built. And if you find someone who cannot be told they're wrong without punishment, run. For one day, your truth will cost you their loyalty. But those who listen with a quiet heart, even if it wounds them at first, those who return to you days later and say, "Thank you, that stayed with me," those are the ones you walk with. For they are rare, and they are safe, not because they are perfect, but because they are teachable, and the teachable, though flawed, are always growing. The tongue, though small, wields immense power, not just to bless or curse, but to reveal. When someone walks out of the room and the conversation shifts, listen, not to what is being said about them, but to what is being revealed about the speaker. Gossip is rarely about the subject. It is more often about the soul doing the speaking. To tear down others in their absence is to confess a hidden fragility, a hunger for superiority that cannot be earned honestly. It whispers of a heart unsettled in its own identity, seeking affirmation by diminishing others. When someone habitually mocks, belittles, or undermines the character of those not present to defend themselves, it is not wit, it is warning. Not cleverness, but cruelty. Watch how they speak when there is no audience to impress. Observe what they choose to say about those they owe nothing to. There is a particular temptation, almost intoxicating, to bond with others through shared contempt. It creates a counterfeit closeness, an illusion of intimacy by constructing enemies out of others. But such bonds are built on sand, and eventually you too will be the topic of their next tale. The person who cannot be trusted with someone else's reputation cannot be trusted with your wounds, your story, or your loyalty. Because if they find joy in dragging others down when backs are turned, do not be surprised when the same blade is used against you once your back is exposed. Words are seeds. They either plant life or decay, and there's something holy about restraint, about the choice to protect even those who would not protect you. There is strength in silence, nobility in refusing to wound others with words, especially when the opportunity arises freely. If someone honors those who are not present, who defends when it would be easier to mock, who chooses to uplift when others laugh, take note. That is integrity, that is depth, that is character. 4. How they respond to someone else's success. There's a strange ache that arises in the human heart when someone else receives the very thing we secretly long for. It is in those moments, when someone else is being celebrated, when doors open for them, when the applause is not ours, that envy attempts to creep in, often quietly cloaked in polite smiles and hollow congratulations. And it is in those moments that the soul reveals itself most honestly. Watch how a person responds to another's rise. Do they celebrate genuinely? Do their words match their eyes? Do they lift others up without comparison? Or does bitterness veil their tone, and does resentment echo softly in their compliments? Jealousy is not always loud. Sometimes it wears a grin. Sometimes it speaks in subtle dismissals. Well, they got lucky, or it won't last, or they just knew the right people. Such statements are not harmless. They are revealing. They tell you that someone's sense of worth is rooted in comparison, that their joy is not full unless they are above. But the pure-hearted rejoice in the blessings of others, because they understand that goodness is not scarce. They are not threatened by someone else's light, because they know their own glow cannot be dimmed by another's shine. They do not race, they walk in purpose. They do not envy, they admire, because they know that timing is unique, that paths are personal, and that the victory of one does not mean the defeat of another. True character is displayed not in how we rise, but in how we watch others rise. It is easy to cheer when we are the ones being honored. It is harder, but far more revealing, to cheer when others are, especially when we are still in the waiting. Especially when we prayed for that very blessing and saw someone else receive it first. The heart that can dance when others succeed, that can bless when others are blessed, that can stand and clap and say, yes, they deserve it. That is a mature heart. That is a rare soul. That is someone safe to walk beside, because their joy is not rooted in competition, but in truth. 5. How they handle crisis and pressure. Crisis strips away polish. It peels back the carefully constructed facades and exposes the rawness of one's inner world. When pressure mounts and things fall apart, when the illusion of control is shattered, who someone truly is begins to rise. Some become cruel, others become calm. Some turn to blame, others turn to prayer. What a person does when they're in the fire will always tell you more than what they say when the sun is shining. Observe how someone behaves under stress. Do they lash out? Do they become self-centered, abandoning others to protect their image or comfort? Do they blame everyone else for their suffering, refusing to own their part? Or do they humble themselves, seek wisdom, and remain anchored in principle even when the winds howl? Adversity is not the maker of character, it is the revealer. What's already inside comes out, and if you've walked closely with someone long enough, you will know their true self shows not at the table of abundance, but in the desert of lack. Do they still speak kindly when nothing is going their way? Do they remain honest when the easy route is deceit? Do they stay loyal when it would be easier to abandon? Many can act loving when life is good, but only a few remain compassionate when life demands everything of them. That person, the one who holds their values under duress, who chooses mercy when it costs them, who remains stable when everything shakes, walk with that one. That is a soul built on rock. Power is not always political. It is not only found in crowns or thrones or titles. Sometimes power is as simple as having the final say in an argument, being in the position to grant forgiveness, holding a secret that could harm, having the means to help, but also the freedom to withhold. And it is in these delicate, often unnoticed moments that a person's character speaks volumes. When someone knows they hold leverage over you, how do they behave? Do they show mercy, or do they exploit your weakness? Do they become gracious, or do they savor control? There are those who are gentle when powerless, but become tyrants the moment advantage arrives. The truth is, some only behave because they must. Their kindness is not virtue, it is circumstance. But power reveals this. Power unmasks the motivations behind behavior. It strips away necessity and gives space to intention. There is a kind of cruelty that thrives in control, the passive kind, the kind that keeps others hanging, unsure, waiting, the kind that pretends to care while withholding clarity or kindness, the kind that enjoys watching others squirm under the weight of dependence. This is not strength. It is a quiet form of manipulation, and it tells you more than words ever could. But those who carry power with humility, who uplift others even when they do not need to, who choose dignity over domination, those are people of depth. They have understood something the world often forgets, that power is a stewardship, not a weapon, that the true measure of greatness is not how many bow before you, but how many feel safe beside you. Watch closely how someone behaves when they are no longer obligated to be kind, when the outcome is already theirs, when they've already won. Do they mock? Do they gloat? Do they humiliate the defeated? Or do they kneel down, offer a hand, and say, "You are still worthy, even now"? There is immense nobility in restraint. There is holy beauty in compassion when conquest is possible. And never forget this: if someone delights in control, if they wield authority to crush rather than to protect, if they rejoice in your helplessness rather than cover it gently, they are not safe. Not for your trust, not for your heart, and not for your future. True strength is not proved in battle, but in mercy after the battle has been won. 7. How they behave when no one is watching. This final sign is perhaps the most sacred and the most difficult to witness. Because it is not seen with eyes, it is not overheard in conversation. It must be discerned, often slowly, through the consistency of someone's life. It is found in the quiet spaces, in the decisions made when there are no consequences, no accolades, no applause, in the hidden hours where only the soul knows what was chosen and what was denied. You will not see this character instantly, but over time it will reveal itself in patterns, in a kind of quiet integrity that doesn't shift with the crowd, in a set of values that are not posted for likes, but lived when no one is applauding, in a faithfulness to truth that doesn't need to be recognized, because it was never for recognition in the first place. Character is not built in spotlight, it is built in shadow. In the 1,000 little choices a person makes when there is no fear of being caught, when there is every opportunity to cheat but none is taken, when the road to convenience is open but the path of conscience is chosen. It is here that virtue is tested, and it is here that many fall. Ask yourself, do their words match their life when no audience is present? Do they honor their promises when keeping them brings no benefit? Do they live the same values in solitude that they proclaim in public? Because if not, you are not dealing with integrity. You are dealing with performance, and performance, no matter how skilled, cannot sustain trust. Eventually the mask grows heavy, the act begins to slip, and the truth, buried for so long, begins to emerge. But when you find someone whose actions align with their words, even in solitude, cherish that soul. They are rare, they are real, they are whole, not because they are perfect, but because they are anchored. Anchored in something deeper than appearances, anchored in a quiet allegiance to truth, anchored in the sacred belief that right is still right, even if no one sees it. This is the character that does not bend with popularity, that does not sell its soul for temporary applause, that does not vanish in trial or mutate in success. It is the character of those who walk with integrity, whether in palaces or in prisons, whether celebrated or forgotten, whether followed or forsaken, because their allegiance is not to the crowd, but to the truth. It is a strange thing, isn't it, that some can wear masks for years without detection, that a man can dine at your table, laugh at your jokes, and even comfort you in sorrow, all the while harboring shadows you never saw coming. That someone can quote scripture, attend worship, speak of loyalty and light, and yet, in the secret corners of their nature, feed envy, feed pride, feed deception. This is the terrifying gift of duplicity. It can mimic goodness, it can rehearse virtue, but it cannot sustain it. The soul cannot lie forever. Eventually, time tests the structure, the wind blows, and the house built on pretense begins to tremble. The storm comes, and the facade begins to crack, and often the unveiling is not loud or dramatic. It is subtle, a shift in tone, a silence that feels colder than words, a decision that betrays a hidden motive. And suddenly you see. You see what you missed when you trusted blindly. You see what you excused in the name of kindness. You see what was always there, but now refuses to remain hidden. It is not wrong to trust. Trust is not foolishness. It is the soil of love. But trust must be given with discernment, and discernment is the discipline of observation. So many hearts are shattered, not because they loved, but because they ignored. They silenced the inner voice that warned them. They justified the small lies. They laughed off the unkindness. They stayed when character whispered, "Leave." And in doing so, they allowed the cracks to deepen until betrayal felt like a sudden avalanche, though it had been gathering silently all along. Character does not deteriorate overnight. It decays slowly, through the choices no one sees, through the permissions one grants to themselves in the name of stress or ambition or self-preservation. One compromise here, one justification there, and the soul begins to shift. And if unchecked, the shift becomes a pattern, and the pattern becomes the person. This is why the signs must not be taken lightly. They are not merely quirks or flaws. They are seeds, and every seed grows. What begins as subtle pride becomes cruelty. What begins as small dishonesty becomes betrayal. What begins as gossip becomes slander, and before long the person you thought you knew becomes a stranger. And not because they changed, but because you finally stopped explaining away their truth. But the danger is not only in them, it is in us. For we too are tempted to construct an image, to protect a version of ourselves that others admire, to speak of humility while clinging to pride, to quote virtue while harboring bitterness, to speak softly in public but lash out in private. And if we are not vigilant, we too will become split. Two selves, one for the world and one for the silence. This is the deeper tragedy, not merely being deceived by others, but becoming deceptive ourselves. And so, the signs are not only for watching others, they are for watching our own soul. Are we gentle to the powerless? Do we welcome correction? Do we celebrate others honestly? Do we restrain our power with compassion? Do we speak kindly when alone? And do we live with integrity when no one is watching? These questions must pierce us before they protect us. For what good is it to diagnose the world and yet neglect the hidden illnesses of our own soul? What good is it to spot deceit in others while wearing masks of our own? The signs are mirrors, not weapons. They are meant to awaken us, not merely to protect us from harm, but to deliver us from becoming the very harm we fear in others. So many walk through life gathering bruises from the hands of those they once loved. So many look back and ask, "How did I not see?" And the answer, most often, is not blindness, but longing. We longed to believe the best. We needed them to be what we hoped, and so we overlooked what we could not afford to confront. But now, on the other side of brokenness, we are faced with a choice. Do we harden or do we learn? Let it be the latter. Let it always be the latter, because the soul that learns becomes wise, and the wise do not build walls, they build gates. Gates that open to the noble, the kind, the humble. Gates that remain closed to the manipulative, the double-minded, the cruel. Gates that do not guard from love, but guard love itself. And in this, we must become not just watchers of character, but cultivators of it. We must plant what we long to find in others. We must become what we search for, because in the end, we attract not what we want, but what we are. The friend we seek is hidden in the person we are becoming, and when we become aligned in integrity, we begin to see clearly who is walking beside us. The journey is long, there will be betrayals, there will be disappointments, there will be moments when the mask falls and your heart breaks. But do not curse these unveilings. They are sacred. They are mercy in disguise. They are not the enemy of hope. They are the guardians of it. For every time the truth is revealed, the soul is refined. And every time you choose to learn rather than grow bitter, you rise. There is something sacred in learning how to see, not with suspicion, not with cynicism, but with spiritual clarity. To see not just the polished surface of a person, but the direction of their heart. To listen between the words, to watch what is chosen in the quiet, to discern the weight behind their kindness. This kind of vision does not come cheaply. It is earned through heartache, through being misled, through letting someone in and watching them change when the cost of pretending becomes too high. But through that ache, a deeper wisdom is born. The wise do not rush to label, nor do they rush to excuse. They observe, they weigh the patterns. They trust, yes, but they also test, not with traps, but with time. Because time is the great revealer. It does not lie, it cannot be fooled. What is false eventually falls beneath its weight, and what is true, what is deeply, unwaveringly real, remains. But to live like this, to live with eyes that see and hearts that remain open, is a tension few are willing to carry. Some choose blindness, it is easier, less painful, but in doing so they trade safety for sentiment. Others choose hardness. They close the gates entirely, no one gets in. But in doing so they trade peace for isolation. And both paths, though understandable, lead to suffering of another kind. What is needed is not blindness or bitterness. What is needed is the courage to see clearly and love wisely, to recognize when someone's character is a danger to your peace, and to walk away, not with rage, but with resolve, to know when someone is not what they pretend to be, and to no longer grant them the intimacy of your trust, not because you hate them, but because you've learned the weight of misplaced loyalty. You are not called to rescue everyone. You are not required to ignore your discernment for the sake of keeping the peace. There is nothing holy in enabling deception. There is nothing virtuous about tolerating harm simply because it comes with a familiar face. Some people do not need another chance. They need distance. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to walk away before their shadow becomes yours. But even in the leaving, let your heart stay clean. Let your memory be honest. Do not rewrite them into monsters. Let the truth be enough. They were not who you believed them to be. They showed you who they truly were. And that truth, though painful, was a gift, because now you are free. Free to stop explaining away the unease. Free to stop hoping they will return as someone better, free to build again, this time on truth. Still, the pain of disillusionment runs deep. When you discover that someone you once trusted, once admired, once loved, was hiding another self all along, it rattles something sacred inside you. It makes you question your judgment, your worth, your ability to ever trust again. But let me remind you, your ability to love deeply was never the problem. Your kindness was never the flaw. Your openness was never your weakness. The failure was not in your soul, it was in their character. So do not punish yourself for having believed, for having hoped, for having stayed. That was a reflection of your heart, not a stain upon it. What matters now is what you choose next. Will you harden, or will you grow? Will you close your eyes to avoid the pain of seeing, or will you refine your vision to protect what is sacred in you? There is a kind of clarity that only pain can give. It sharpens you, it awakens you, it burns away the illusions and reveals the soul's true north. And once you've seen it, once you've walked through the fire of betrayal and come out the other side with your heart still beating, your faith still breathing, your compassion still intact, you become something unshakable. You become someone who cannot be manipulated again, because now you see. You see the signs, you hear what is not said, you feel the dissonance between word and action, and you honor the truth, even when it costs you comfort. This is maturity. This is wisdom. This is the path of those who refuse to let deceit define their journey. Yet even now, even after the betrayals, even after the unveiling, let there still be room in your heart for goodness, for beauty, for people who are who they claim to be, because they exist. Not everyone is false. Not everyone is playing a part. There are those whose souls are built on truth, who walk in the light even when no one is looking, who treat the weak with reverence, who celebrate others without jealousy, who wield power with gentleness, who correct and are willing to be corrected, who are loyal even in silence. And when you find them, you will know, because now you have eyes that see. We speak often of love, trust, loyalty, yet we rarely pause long enough to consider that none of these virtues can survive without character as their foundation. Love without character becomes manipulation. Trust without character becomes naivety. Loyalty without character becomes enslavement. Character is not merely an accessory to a good life, it is the root. It determines the integrity of every promise, the purity of every intention, the weight of every word. But our world teaches the opposite. It teaches image over integrity, performance over principle. We are taught to succeed, to shine, to attract, to impress, but not to build character. We teach children to win, but do we teach them to lose with dignity? We tell them to dream big, but do we tell them that a small, honest life is far better than a big, deceitful one? We reward the polished, the poised, the charming, but rarely the honest, the self-sacrificing, the unseen. And yet, the soul knows. It longs for more than charm. It longs for something deeper, something sturdier. When you are surrounded by false smiles and shallow praise, the soul hungers for something real, for someone whose yes means yes, and whose no means no, for someone who will not change their tone when your usefulness expires, for someone who chooses goodness not because they must, but because they cannot bear to live without it. Character is what remains when all the costumes are removed, when success is stripped away and failure knocks loudly, when beauty fades and attention shifts, when nothing is left to gain and yet kindness is still offered. That is character. That is truth. That is someone who walks by a deeper compass than approval or applause. It is not perfection we must look for in others, nor in ourselves. That would be a foolish and impossible pursuit. Every soul has shadows, every life bears flaws. But there is a difference between imperfection and duplicity, between failure and deception. The former admits, repents, grows. The latter hides, blames, repeats. One is human, the other is dangerous. But it is not only in others that we must watch, it is in ourselves. It is not enough to protect your heart from false character. You must also refuse to become it. You must ask yourself, even in secret, even in the silence of your thoughts, am I who I claim to be? Do I live what I speak? Do I treat others as I would hope to be treated if no one else were watching? Am I the same when the lights go off, when the reward is gone, when no eyes are upon me? This is the great internal labor, to live not by impression but by conviction, to choose truth when lies would be easier, to stay kind when cruelty is fashionable, to forgive when revenge would feel more satisfying, to correct yourself when no one would have known. That is character. That is the making of a soul that can be trusted, a soul that can build sacred things, families, friendships, communities. That last. Do not be afraid to confront what is false in others, but first confront what is false in yourself. The heart must be purified before the eyes can see clearly. Only then will you discern rightly, not from fear or past wounds, but from a place of wisdom and spiritual clarity. You will not need to hate in order to leave. You will not need to shame in order to expose. You will simply know. You will walk away when needed without bitterness and stay when needed without fear. And here lies the quiet power of integrity. It is not loud, it is not flashy, it is not always recognized or rewarded, but it builds a foundation that cannot be shaken. When you walk in integrity, you are unshaken by praise and untouched by slander. You do not need the world's approval because you are not building on sand. You know who you are. There is peace in this, a peace not dependent on how others perceive you, a peace that remains when others lie about you, abandon you, or misunderstand you. Because you are not trying to impress them. You are trying to be true. You are not chasing reputation. You are building substance, and substance will stand long after charm has crumbled. So few choose this path, but those who do, though they may walk alone at times, walk with God, for He is not impressed by appearance. He is not deceived by eloquence. He sees what we cannot, and He weighs what others ignore. And when the world forgets, misjudges, or passes over you, He remembers, because He has always seen the heart. To walk with character is to walk against the current. It is to make peace with being misunderstood. It is to choose silence over self-defense when words would only feed confusion. It is to bless in return for curses, to forgive without receiving apology, to remain upright when surrounded by those who bend to gain advantage. And it is not easy, no, it never is. But ease was never the goal. Truth is. And in that truth, something unbreakable is forged, not in the body, not even in the mind, but in the spirit. The kind of strength that does not roar, but endures, that does not parade, but remains, that stands in the storm not with arrogance, but with clarity, because its roots are deep, deeper than ambition, deeper than convenience, deeper than the shifting winds of cultural applause. We are not called to be impressive, we are called to be authentic, and in the quiet pursuit of that authenticity, we begin to attract what we once chased, the right people, the right moments, The right peace, not because we manipulated it, but because character aligns us with truth, and truth always draws to itself what is eternal. When you commit to character, your circle will grow smaller. That is inevitable. Because not everyone can bear the weight of truth. Some prefer the safety of surface-level comfort. They will call you harsh for naming what they fear to face. They will accuse you of pride for standing in integrity. They will walk away not because you failed them, but because your presence reminded them of what they were unwilling to become. Let them go. Release them, not in bitterness, but in grace. They were a chapter, not the story. You have been called to build something eternal, and eternity cannot be built with those who only dwell in the moment. So keep walking, keep becoming, keep refining, not for applause, not for admiration, but because there is something sacred about becoming who you were created to be, even if no one else applauds it, but heaven. You may not see the fruit immediately. Integrity often grows in soil that looks barren. You may feel behind, overlooked, forgotten, but the seed planted in truth always finds its season, always. And when it does, it blooms, with a strength that cannot be stolen, a beauty that cannot be mimicked, a peace that does not shatter when storms come again. And they will come again. Storms will always come for the soul committed to truth. But do not be afraid of them. They are not your enemy. They are your testing ground. They separate the real from the fake, the strong from the hollow, the steady from the shifting. Let them come, let them blow. Let them reveal what must fall and what must remain. You do not need to fear the wind when your roots are deep. So when you wake in the morning and your heart is heavy with the weight of what you've seen in others, remember, the signs were not to punish you. They were to protect you. You were not wrong for trusting. You were just learning. And now you are wiser, not harder, more discerning, not more distant, more anchored, not more isolated. This is growth. And when you begin to see these signs in others, those rare, beautiful signs of true character, honor them. Speak life into them, encourage them, because the world will not always notice them, but you will. Because you've walked through enough falsehood to recognize what is real. You've heard enough lies to feel the rhythm of truth. You've been broken enough times to know what hands can be trusted to hold you. There is a kind of glory in the soul who walks uprightly when the world is bending, who chooses the narrow road even when the wide one is easier, who bears the cost of integrity not with pride but with quiet joy, because they know their reward is not in the applause of men, but in the approval of the one who sees all. And that, dear listener, is the ultimate weight of character. It is not about being known, it is about being true. And in a world that values the visible, may you have the courage to cherish the invisible, the unseen, the sacred. May you see what others miss. May you become what others fear. And may your life speak, louder than your words, of a character that cannot be bought, bent, or broken,